Hey Foilers, we hope you enjoy an extended preview of this HD Foilers only episode. If you want to hear the whole episode, help support the show and become an HD member. Just head over to our website, thetfhc.com, and click on members to see what membership plans we have available. Your financial support means the world to us and helps us keep the show up and running, pay our bills, and provide you the best content possible. Most of all, your financial support helps us reach the lost for God. As always, thanks so much for all the love and support. And now, on to the preview.
What's the point? They're trying to show you that even when it seems like God's not there, he really is orchestrating it all. You just don't see it until the end. And that's what I think is going on with the Maccabees situation as well. God has withdrawn, and the next, biblical event is Messiah, right? Mm-hmm. Malachi says, before coming of the Lord will be Elijah the prophet. And Jesus said, John the Baptist is Elijah the prophet. And so you've got this monumental, 400 years of history that Daniel is sort of giving us a taste of the things that are going to occur, but it's all about the coming Messiah, So that's a little bit of a off topic, but getting back to Judah, though, this story of Judah Maccabee, it's got that, I try to bring in the theology in it, just like what we're talking about, but my goal is to write entertaining stories. And so it's not going to be a theological lesson. In fact, I wrote this in a way that's similar to Braveheart, my favorite movie of all time. I noticed that the Maccabees story had a lot in common. Mm-hmm. And so I have Judah Maccabee as the hero of the story. And there's romance in there as well, which I think is very important. And but interestingly, the books of the Maccabees don't tell us anything about Judah's background, other than he's a member of this priestly family. But not every member in a priestly family become priests, right? And so I actually use some creative license to have Judah Maccabee start out as a Hellenistic mercenary for the Seleucid kingdom, which was real. Everything that I do that might be creative fiction is always based on something that was real anyway. And so that they really did have Jewish mercenaries. But when he finally sees the atrocities against his people, he leaves them and returns to his people. And then he and his brothers rise up in revolt. But he ultimately becomes the general. When their father dies, he becomes the general who leads the Jews in the fight, right? And so he's got this same sort of Braveheart, character arc where, he wants to just have a family and, he wants to live in peace, but he's forced to rise up and fight against a government that at first he thought we should obey, right? But then ultimately he realizes, no, they're forcing us to actually deny our own covenant and our own God, and that becomes the rallying cry, right? So that's sort of the bigger context that the story is taking place in. But it's there's battles, but there's also a lot of court intrigue. I try to go into the Seleucid kingdom and King Antiochus and his world and his wife and his daughter and some of the political machinations between the generals. And then I also have some of the battles and then what's going on in the Jewish side with Menelaus, who's a traitorous high priest, right? He's like a villain, right? And I have him as such. And then I also, lastly, I'll have a story going on in the spiritual world. And that's the component that I bring to the mix that is really unique in that, as we've talked about before, the premise of all my series, including Chronicles of the Watchers, is this notion that the Bible says there are spiritual principalities and powers. Daniel 10, right? Yep. Prince of Persia, Prince of Greece. There are principalities and powers over nations or kings or cities. And they're fallen, and the principle is, what if those spiritual principalities were, the Bible calls them the sons of God, right? And what if they're fallen because they're evil, but what if they were the behind it? What if they were the demonic reality behind the gods of the nations that the people worship? So these fallen angels are masquerading as the gods of Greece, the gods of Egypt, etc. So in my story, I also have Greek gods Zeus and Hera, Apollo. And I even found a creative way to bring in Heracles. He wasn't technically a god, he was deified later, but I brought him into the story in a way that's so cool. I'm so proud of. And I think people will love it if they know anything about Greek religion. But those beings, while the Seleucid king is fighting Egypt, you've got the Greek king down in Egypt, but his gods in Egypt are the Egyptian gods, right? Horus and Ra and all that. And so those are battling it out while the earthly kings are battling it out, right?